The advantages of speaking last is that some of what Professor Abhijit Sen did have been already explained to you in much better way than I could have done it by two people who knew him much close, I mean very, very closely, but also interacted with him professionally. So they knew what he was doing, and particularly with Professor Utsa Patnaik. And I think the idea here is to not to discuss too much about his professional work. That I think is important. But I wanted to talk to you about is him as a person, which is something which is, again, we all who were students, his students who were directly taught by him, but simply interacted with him, knew or had the privilege of understanding him closer, very closely, would know. But I think this was something which every student of CESP, even though they were not students or they were not directly taught by him, would vouch for. That as a human being, he was somebody who was very warm, would welcome you irrespective of whose student you were. Something which we all would joke that he would forget his students. He would not remember the name of the students. But that was a virtue, because he would not remember whether you are his student or somebody else's student. You will get the same attention. So in a sense, that was something which was a good thing. So he would not make a preference between me as a student or somebody else who is not a student. They'll get an equal treatment, and probably a longer treatment, in a sense, trying to understand what you are doing. So in a sense, that was a good thing there. But I just wanted to highlight three aspects of his life in that sense. One, as a teacher. I mean, I interacted with him for close to 25 years that we worked together, first as a student and then as a co-author. And he was somebody who was at the peak of his career when I joined him as a student in 1997 when he had joined CESP. So a large part of the time that I spent as a teacher, he was basically with the government. I mean, that was the case. And as a student, which is very common, and that is what I wanted to bring out to you, that's something which all of you will be dealing with. We didn't have any rules as such that you have to publish before you get your MPhil degree or PhD degree. That was not a requirement at that point of time. Not to even join a faculty, nobody looked at, you didn't have to calculate your API scores in that sense. But obviously there was a pressure in that sense to publish, as this is what we are as academics doing as part of our research training in that sense. The first thing that he told me, and this was something which was much later, when because we worked on a number of papers. Some of them got published, some of them did not get published because we decided we will not publish, although we worked quite a bit. The first lesson that he told me right in the beginning, never write a bad paper. It's better not to publish than publish a bad paper. He said that people will not remember you for your good papers, but that one bad paper will always be your blot. So never ever publish a bad paper. And that is what meant that if you are working on a paper, we would work on a paper for 2 years, 3 years, at the end of it, it will get published. But he would not compromise on the quality of the work that was there. And I think that is something which he instilled, that you should never compromise on the quality of work, even if it means there is pressure to just get a paper out and do something like that. That I think, and probably that is the reason why he did not have too many publications. But each one of his papers is a classic, in the sense, is among the most cited papers, is among something which created a debate, as Vikas talked about. But also, even if though not so popular in that sense, are still referred as papers which were classic, which brought together. But as a faculty, as a teacher, I think he was somebody who was very open to ideas. He would not say that, look, this is the right way to do it. He would listen to you and he would want you to do whatever you're doing and get engaged with that. That, I think, the openness was something which was, again, a remarkable feature. And I must say that this is something which is true for almost 70-80% of the faculty in JNU. In my center, it was close to 100% of the faculty who would do that. So that was something which was very, very much a part of the center, I would say, culture in that sense. And that continues to be the case even today. I think in some ways his ideas or his work in the sense are more recognized when he was part of the policy making, the high level grain high-level committee on long-term grain policy. That obviously everybody has talked about. But there are lots of others where he intervened, but is not known because he didn't come out with a report in that sense. His commitment to universalization, the high-level committee and the PDS and everybody knows about it. But I would say that his contribution to making sure that the NREGA, which was supposed to be a flagship program introduced by the UPA-1 government, the fact that it is not a targeted one, but a universal one, he had a role to play, and a very strong role to play, because he believed in that, and he was a planning commission member, and he did circulate his notes, a good research work, which made sure that NREGA was not part of the targeted approach, because the BPL-APL system existed even then. And he managed to make sure that NREGA was something which was not part of the APL-BPL structure. So again, there are many, many other interventions that he did. And I think he had firm belief in this. This was not something which was coming only from some kind of analysis of the data. He believed in the fact that on certain issues, you need to be taking a stand, which is a more kind of a citizenship kind of a approach. Or for example, on food, on employment, on health, and various other things. He was against any form of targeting, because he thought that this is the duty of the state. And this came from his belief, which was there when he did his PhD, the PhD thesis or the work that he published in CJE, where he really felt that the state had a role to play, particularly a country like ours, not just in providing food and employment and other things, but also in terms of main structural changes where state can play an important role. And that is something where he did not believe that this is something where the state, meaning only the central government, which is a part that Vikas also talked about, his belief in the capacity of the states, in the sense the decentralization, was something which was very much there. In fact, the flagship program that he was author of, in one sense, the Rashtriya Krishi Vikas Yojana, the RKVY, was something which was designed in a way where states had a role to play. And it was one of the most successful programs. And he, at least in the UPA-1, the agricultural growth rate, a large part of the increase that we see owed itself to the way it was designed. But again, it was not something where he believed that in a sense that this is how it should be. But from core fundamental belief that in a federal country like ours, in a country where states are the laboratories, or where they can do much more, they are much closer to the ground, they should have the deciding power. Even though he was part of the central government, and as planning commission would, normally the complaint was that they would basically throw around their weight and they will try and say that we are the center and we will dictate what is to be done. He designed most of the policies, or it contributed to the most of the policies where the states will have a role. The center will have only a minimal role or providing finances in that sense. Again, that came from his core belief of what he was doing. And this is something which is very obvious in many, many other programs that we're talking about. I think the third one again is which Professor Utsa Patnaik already talked about, that throughout the 15 years that he was part of the government, he continued to teach. He was available here, and he did not forget his commitment to the students, even though he was not required to do so. This is not his duty. He was obviously on leave, but he would take classes. His Saturday classes were again very popular, and even when we had a hostel crisis in the early 90s, where a large majority of the students were day scholars, in Saturday, when the classes were held on Saturdays, all the day scholars would come, because he was a brilliant preacher, whatever he was teaching. And as Vikas has pointed out, he taught many, many different courses. We don't know whether he taught all the courses, but definitely there is nobody who has taught more courses in terms of the range of courses that he taught. But what is also remarkable, that even though he was a planning commission member who enjoys the rank of a minister of state at that point of time, he didn't have the feeling that he's coming from a different level. He was accessible, and you could go and talk to him, you could ask questions to him, you can criticize him, and he was entitled to a house outside one of those big bungalows that you think of. But he was there in the university. Throughout the 15 years, he continued to stay in the JNU campus. He did not move out to reside in a bigger flat or to be with all the paraphernalia that comes with being a minister of state. He was there, and that also meant that he was accessible to us throughout. Most of my work used to be after 7 in the night, because he would come back from office after 5 or 6 o'clock in the evening, and night we'll work together. or early in the morning 7 to 9, because 9 o'clock he had to go. But he was available, and that is something which was good. I mean, I don't think I would have been able to go to some place in central Delhi to do that kind of thing. But that also made sure that a large number of students, they used to stay in Purvanchal earlier, and lots of students from Purvanchal would go and simply talk that what is happening, why is this happening, and he would explain to them. I mean, without saying that no, I'm busy and you come and take an appointment. Nothing like that ever worked with him. So I think in that sense he was really a JNU person, and he was somebody who valued his position in JNU. He was very proud of being contributed to JNU, not just being as an academic, but also, and this is again something which I wanted to highlight, that most people, at least other academics that I've seen who move from academia to government, would like to make sure that they don't take any controversial positions. You want to take a position which does not offend the government. I mean, this is now a common feature for everybody. You don't want to say anything against the government because your next appointment depends on, or next position depends on your governorship, or anything will depend on whatever is happening. He didn't care about any of these. And I wanted to highlight that in 98-99, which was a very turbulent year in JNU, where there was a crackdown on JNU, a very severe crackdown in JNU, where a lot of students had to go to jail, they were arrested, lots of cases. And the faculty of this university, all of them lined up in front of the Sarojini Nagar police station to give bail to the students. And Professor Utsa Patnaik was also there, I suppose, and Prabhat was there. Prabhat was there, and Abhijit Sen, who was a member of, who was the chairperson of the Committee for Agricultural Commission, CESP, he was there in the front of the line to give bail. In fact, he was my bailee. He was the one who gave bail to me, and he never hesitated in putting his name to a statement that he cared about or he believed. Even as a planning commission member, certain things, for example, he believed on, and he put his name. I mean, irrespective of the fact that he was, he was not required to, or he would have simply said, taken the position that, look, I'm in government and I don't need to do that. For example, his belief against death punishment, for example. And I remember he signing that statement right in the front, even though he was there, and that meant that going against the government position. And he would take that position in various other forums. For JNU, definitely, anything that required, he would be willing to sign that. He didn't care about what is going to be the consequences of those ones. And he didn't, in a sense, compromise on the basic fundamentals that he lived for. And that is something which is, again, defined by him, by his role as a teacher, as a policy maker, and as a person who was, you would see him, you will meet him in JNU campus in different ways, not just, he was not somebody who was very much there in the center in the sense, because he was, for the major part of the time that I saw, he was in there. But his house was like his office, and you could go at any point of time, you would be greeted, and you would be, you can have anything that you want to have. I think that is what defined him, and despite the fact that he did, at least for the last 25 years, he was not somebody who was very much active, and he used to take classes here. He still has memories. The students remember him as somebody who taught them, who told them what to do, who discussed with them, disagreed with them, at times agreed with them, but most importantly, stood with JNU, with the faculty, with the students, with this institution, irrespective of what his official position was. That is something which is a remarkable role as a person that he played. And I just say that he was not, he was definitely unique in that sense, but something that we have had that privilege of having been taught by those teachers, and many of them have done it. This is something which Prabhat also has, as a teacher, has done it, and many others who have been part of the government have done it as a teacher, with the faith in the students, faith in the institution, faith in the fact that as a teacher there are certain responsibilities that come together, and you don't simply take leave from being a teacher. You continue to be a teacher even when you retire, even when you are with the government, and that Abhijit Sen in that sense embodies that great institution that JNU was built on, where all of these people contributed to making it the institution that it is today. I'll just stop here.